and welcome to the South African College of Applied Psychology. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Zarina Royapan, Principal of the institution. I see many new faces here today, which means that our SACAP learning community is growing, and that's really exciting. I also see familiar faces, those that were with us last month when we launched our monthly psychology talk. So welcome back, and it's good to see you again. And I see that you've taken heed of Adele's advice, where she told you to fill your tank. So you've come to SACAP's petrol station. So that's good. Today's topic is a glimpse into the world of autism. And our first speaker is none other than Samantha Pretorius. Samantha here is a registered counselling psychologist. She has a passion for children, especially children with special needs. She's also just recently joined the SACAP team, and she's part of our faculty. Her focus is going to be on the clinical aspects of autism. At the conclusion of her talk, she's going to hand over to Louise Patrick. Louise is a mother whose child was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2, and just very recently, at the age of 5, her diagnosis was reversed due to dietary interventions. And Louise is going to come and share her journey and her experiences with us. So I hand you over to Samantha.
Thanks, Zarina. Hi, everyone. As Zarina said, I'm Samantha Pretorius. So today we're talking about autism. And what I just need to tell you...
I apologize. I just would like to ask everybody if you could please put your cell phones and other electronic devices on silent, like that, so it's not disturb the speakers. Sorry about that. Sure.
So today we're looking at autism, alright? And what I want to tell you first and foremost is that every subsection I'm talking about today, I could have a discussion with you for a day on each subsection, okay? But obviously because of time constraints, you can't do that. So I'm just going to touch the bases and hopefully stimulate your thinking, get you interested in autism, and then please, you can contact either myself, Louise, any one of us to find out more about what we discussed today. All right, so I just want to remind you that we're really touching the surface because of time constraints. All right, so let's start off with. This was working 5 minutes ago. Okay.
It's on.
Okay, let's start off with what is autism. All right, thanks. Okay. So what is autism? And here's a statement here. No one truly understands autism unless they've lived with it. No one. All right? So what I want to say is that a lot about autism, there's a lot we don't know about autism, but there's also a lot that we do know. So today I'm going to share with you what we do know and highlight those things that are still under research and things we're not entirely sure about right now. Okay, so first and foremost, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. So if we break that down, neuro being brain, developmental disorder, so something's not gone completely correctly with the development. And the disorder manifests cognitively, so so it manifests cognitively as well as behaviorally. So you're seeing it in the way somebody with an autism diagnosis is thinking, as well as in the way they're behaving. Okay, I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm not going to get into this. But just to let you know that a lot of research is looking at the brain of people with autism through autopsy to see what is going on there, because we can't see it physically from the outside. And there are certain parts of the brain that are known to be developmentally different in those with autism, particularly those parts that deal with communication and emotional regulation. Right, we're going to look at the triad of impairments. So then I'm going to take it further, but just to start off with, there are 3 main areas of impairment that we're looking at when we're looking at autism. Firstly, we're looking at communication problems. So this could vary from a language delay all the way up until complete lack of speech and verbal ability. Then if we go down, there's impaired social functioning. So the little ones with autism, they struggle to connect with their peers. They're struggling to build those relationships, to initiate relationships and sustain them. And then on the right-hand side, there are repetitive, rigid behaviors and thinking patterns. So we're looking at kids who are very black and white in their thinking. They've got very specific ways and idiosyncratic ways of thinking and behaving. I'm going to break that down a little bit further now. Before we get there, there's been a fourth dimension that's been added to this triad. And now we're looking at a quadrant of impairments. Because if you look at those with autism, you're going to also see sensory difficulties. That's often why you'll see a little one with autism blocking their ears, okay? Or they don't like the feel of the tag in their clothes, or that food you gave them's got a funny texture in their mouth and they don't like it, all right? It also goes a lot further than that, but those are the basics of sensory difficulties. So like I said, we've gone from a triad of impairments to a quadrant of impairments. Okay, what else are you going to see? So if we're looking at a little one with autism, what are you going to see? And of course this list is not exhaustive, but let's just start there. Okay, you're going to see a need for sameness and routine. They don't like things that are unexpected, all right? They want things to be orderly and in a predictable fashion. There's often a lack of eye contact. One of the reasons for that is the child, when they're looking at your face, they're not getting any useful information from it. So they might as well not look at you. Because I'm looking at you to read your facial expressions, but if I can't read your facial expressions, then there's no need for me to look at you. They also sometimes appear as if they're deaf. So if you're calling your child, Nicole, and there's no reaction. They don't respond to the name being called. They don't understand gestures. So if I say, look over there, this means nothing. Why is your arm out with a finger pointing? That doesn't mean anything. Okay? Also the same with facial expressions. So if I go, that doesn't mean anything. Alright? These are things we teach the kids. Alright? They're rote learners. So they might learn their counting well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But there's no understanding behind that initially. Right? So it's like parrot type of learning. They're very literal in their thinking. Alright? There's no space for ambiguity, there's no space for figurative speech. So if you say something like, oh, you hit the nail on the head, they're literally picturing nail, head being hit. Okay? Or you're the apple of mommy's eye. Doesn't make sense. So very, very literal in their thinking. You often see a lot of stimming, which is self-stimulatory behavior. Alright? That's when you're seeing little ones flapping. Okay? You see that? You see them rocking. They might look out of the corner of their eye to see something like that. So it's all those little odd behaviors. Then they also don't initiate. So you're expecting at a certain developmental level for a child to initiate, whether it's conversation or activity or interaction. There's that lack of initiation there. There's also what's called toe walking. So they're walking on their toes. And I know Louise speaks about it, that her mom thought her little daughter was cute by walking on her toes. But that's also one of the indications. And they seem very distressed for no apparent reason. You can't figure out why. Why are they so anxious? Why are they so upset? There's no visible trigger to you. They also like to play alone. So the other kids will be playing over there, and they have no desire to go engage with them. They're much happier alone. There's also a lack of awareness of others. So others might be coming in and out, and they're around them, but they're shut off from them. And often you're also dealing with learning difficulties. So it's not part of the autism, but there's often a learning difficulty there as well. You often see inappropriate attachment to objects. So it could be a toy, it could be something odd like a dishcloth, whatever it might be. Some inappropriate attachment to that object, that they can't be without it. They will go into a meltdown if they can't have it. And also strange fears. It could be a fear of a color, a fear of the color yellow. No rational reason for it, but an absolute fear of something like that. And there's also they struggle with understanding other people's point of views. I like this on the side. Autism, always unique, totally interesting, sometimes mysterious. All right. What's very important to remember here is that we're dealing with a spectrum. Okay, so we've got mild on the one end, we've got severe on the other, and moderate in between. And that spectrum is really vast as well. So you're going to see a range of impairments from mild, moderate to severe. And that's what makes autism so tricky, is that every child is at a different place on the spectrum. Alright, so that's why we talk about autism spectrum disorders, which we'll get to just now. So it's just important to remember that severity varies and falls somewhere on that continuum. Okay, I'm going to show you a movie now. It's a 5-minute clip of a girl by the name of Carly who is severely autistic. It's a YouTube clip, so the quality isn't phenomenal, but you'll get the gist of it. And then how her family made use of technology to engage with their child and connect with her.
Now, what may be the most remarkable coming out event we've ever seen? A little girl is unable to speak a word or connect to the world around her in any way, or so everyone thought.
Born in Toronto, Canada, Carly Fleischmann was 2 years old when it became clear she was not keeping up with her twin sister Tara.
When you're told your child is going to be developmentally delayed, that they might achieve the developmental level of a 6-year-old, it's like being kicked in the gut.
When Arthur Fleischmann and his wife Tammy learned the diagnosis was autism, they expected the worst, that the twins were headed in different directions.
And how bad did it get for Carly those first few years? Awful. Part of her delays prevented her from walking, from sitting up.
It was clear that Carly, like most autistic children, was lost in her own world, perpetually swimming underwater.
And all the doctors would say, you're the parent. You should do as much as you feel you need to do for this kid.
The Fleischmanns were on their own. Experts told them that early intervention was critical.
You use your fork.
So ever since Carly was 3, her therapy has been intensive, unrelenting.
This took about 40 to 60 hours a week of one-to-one therapy. She always had about 3 to 4 therapists working with her. And if you're not getting results with one approach, you move on, you try something else.
You didn't give up. You pushed Carly.
When you look in Carly's eyes, you can see an innate intelligence, so we never gave up. We never gave up.
But if there was intelligence, Carly's ceaseless rocking, flailing arms, and tantrums hid any trace of it. Worse, she couldn't speak. Not a word.
I did not have any expectation that she would have a fluent form of communication.
Dr. Nicole Walton-Allen is a clinical psychologist who led Carly's therapy program.
Her profile was that of a child who was severely autistic and more than likely moderately mentally retarded.
And did you ever think about institutionalizing her? We had friends saying, you've been plugging away, spending thousands of dollars on therapy. You're not really seeing the progress. So, of course, you start thinking about, should she be in a group home? But you decided against it. I could never do it. Could never do it. How can you give up your kid?
Despite thousands of hours of therapy over months and years, Carly's progress was excruciatingly slow. That is until one day 3 years ago when Carly was 11. She ran to a computer for the first time, and what happened next was a breakthrough so profound it would finally pierce Carly's silent, secret world.
And she was quite distressed, and she started to spell H-U-R, and it was like T, hurt. And then a little bit later on, she spells H-E-L, and we kind of pushed her to finish, and she puts P, so she spells help. Afterwards, she sort of got up, went behind the couch, and she threw up.
Barbara Fenton Nash is one of Carly's longtime therapists.
So what did this tell you?
It told us that there was a lot more going on there than we knew, and to us that was a breakthrough moment because we hadn't specifically taught her the words.
And at first we didn't believe it. Knowing this child for 10 years and never seeing her write a thing, of course you're going to be skeptical.
Everyone was, including her other therapists, who were now desperate to see proof. But Carly refused to type, exhibiting the same hysterical behavior that led experts to label her as mentally retarded.
She would strip off her clothes. She would go into the bathroom and she would engage in fecal smearing. So the typing was great, but no one could see it.
What was needed was some tough love. If Carly wanted something, she would have to type for it.
First type, and then you get. Let's go.
Oh, she had to work for it. If she wanted information, if she wanted to go somewhere, she had to type by herself.
Finally, several months later, Carly began to type for others.
She started to realize that by communicating, she had power over her environment.
And what came through her finger, typing one letter at a time, with fluency no one could believe, was astonishing.
I am autistic, but that's not who I am. Take time to know me. before you judge me. I am cute, funny, and like to have fun.
Through her torrent of words, Carly began to unravel the mysteries behind her often wild behavior. Like banging her head.
Because if I don't, it feels like my body is going to explode. It's just like when you shake a can of Coke. If I could stop it, I would, but it's not like turning a switch off. I know what is right and wrong, but it's like I have a fight with my brain over it.
Use your words.
And Carly was not shy about expressing her desires and frustrations.
I want to be able to go to school with normal kids, but not have them getting upset or scared if I hit a table or scream. I want something that will put out the fire.
We were also horrified because for years we had spoken in front of her as if she wasn't there.
Now, for the first time, Carly was able to have conversations with her parents.
Okay, so that's just a little snippet. If you type in Carly into YouTube, you can see a lot more of her parents' videos. So her folks use technology to, well, actually she used technology to reach out to her parents. iPads are also opening up the world for a lot of children with autism who take to technology, and there are actual special programs on there that can speak for the kids. All right. Okay, let's carry on. Okay, then you might have heard about Asperger's, Aspies or Asperger's disorder or Aspergers Syndrome. And often people use the terms interchangeably, but that's not correct. So I'm just going to unpack that. I've got a picture here of Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. And if you watch Big Bang Theory and you know Sheldon, that's a lot of what Asperger's looks like. All right? So it's less severe symptoms of autism, but what's important there is there's no language delay. Right? So we looked at that triad initially. We take out the language problems. Okay. These kids usually want to fit in with their peers, but they actually just don't know how to do so. And one of the things they struggle with a lot is understanding the subtleties and nuances of language. So irony and humor, it goes completely over their head. And you can see how that impacts them socially with their peers. And they normally have above to above average and intelligence, and they're often what you call your little professors. They've usually got a specific interest, and I'm thinking of one child in particular that was science. So anything to do with science. You could say, "Hi Damon, how was your day?" "Oh my word, look at my book." And he's off on a tangent about it. So he's got the verbal ability, but struggles socially and has these odd behaviors as well. Alright. I don't want to take away from autism, but what I want to say is that sometimes it's not just autism or autism in isolation. And I must give credit to Jenny Buckle from Reach Autism South Africa in Durbanville. She is phenomenal. Google Jenny Buckle and Reach Autism, and you'll find out about her amazing story. She has autistic triplets, right? And a lot of what I know about autism is through Jenny. And Jenny speaks about a pie chart, all right, to say that you might not just be dealing with autism. You might have, in this one, the blue is autism, okay, but there's also developmental delay. It could be gross motor, it could be fine motor, it could be in any other area of development. And then also we've got dyslexia. Oh, dyslexia with unless. I'm spelling dyslexia incorrectly. So you might not just be dealing with autism in isolation, which also makes treatment difficult and diagnosis. Right, so coming to diagnosing, how do we do this? Unfortunately, there's no simple test or scan or screen to do. There are a lot of behavioral checklists, and what we do as psychologists or as pediatricians do, you're doing observations, you're doing a very detailed history, you're doing developmental screening, and all of that together to get a good picture of this little one in front of you. And what we use, the criteria are from the DSM, it's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, and that has all the disorders that we can diagnose and all the criteria. And why I say for now is that in May the DSM-5 is coming out, and that changes things, and I'll get to that in a minute or so. So at the moment, we're looking at social impairments. So here we're looking at difficulties with non-verbal communication, non-verbal behaviors. We're looking at a lack of peer relations, no spontaneous seeking to share enjoyment. So say a little 3-year-old is on the spectrum, they're not going to say, look, or point and show you things. They're just doing it for themselves and doing it with themselves. They don't want to engage you in their fun. There's also a lack of emotional reciprocity. They struggle with that too. Then we're looking at impairments in communication. So that could either be delayed or total lack of spoken language. We're also looking at a difficulty in initiating conversation or sustaining it. And there's also very stereotyped and repetitive use of language. And it's often very needs-based. So it's not to have a conversation with you, it's I need this or I want that, if they can make it up that far. And then there's also very much a lack of make-believe or imaginative play. And then the third area, there's restricted, repetitive, and stereotype patterns of behavior, interests, and activities. So there's often a preoccupation with something at a particular time. We know all kids go through phases, all right, when they're obsessed with Barney or obsessed with Teletubbies or whatever it might be. But this is developmentally inappropriate, all right? There's a lot of inflexibility and very stereotyped and repetitive motor behavior. And there's often a preoccupation with parts of objects. So if you're giving a little one a car, they might not be interested in playing with the car as you would expect, but they just want to look at that one wheel and watch the wheel go round and round and round and round and round forever. So if you look over here, this little one's lined up all his toys. So rather than playing with the toys in an imaginative way, he's getting order to it. And here also with the cans from the fridge or from the cupboard, stacking them there. Alright, like I said, the DSM-5 is coming out, and that's going to change things. Now the specific criteria are revised. So what we just looked at, those are the criteria in the DSM-4 as it stands. In the DSM-5, they're getting rid of autism and Aspergers. It's now going to be called Autism Spectrum Disorders, ASD. All right. So it's going to be an umbrella term, and then you're going to rate the severity of it. So it's going to be an umbrella that's going to take into account autistic disorder, Asperger's disorder, and then 3 other disorders that we're not going to get into today, but it's going to be an overarching term to cover those. And with that comes there are a lot of people who say it's a good thing, a lot of people say it's a bad thing, and for various reasons on either side of the debate. All right, the big one. What causes this? Okay, there's no simple answer to that, unfortunately. Like I said, there's a lot about autism we still don't know. All right, but there are some things we do know. Okay, so evidence from autopsy suggests that in utero, so during pregnancy, there are events that affect the development of the brain. And the events themselves are still under investigation and when they take place. Because a mom could have an infection at one point and it doesn't seem to have an impact, but maybe at another point it might. So possibilities here are infection, inflammation, trauma, or genetics. Okay, those are some of the things that the Child Mind Institute say could be the events that have an impact. But the general consensus amongst the literature is that there's a genetic predisposition, like there would be for any disorder, and then some type of environmental insult or some type of environmental factor. And the two together are resulting in autism, or ASD as it's going to be called. And what's also said is that the timing of that insult is important, but we don't know exactly when the crucial periods are in development. Okay, vaccines. Now this is such a controversial topic. Like I said, each of these could be unpacked for a day at a time, and this one would get heartbeats up and temperatures rising. So I'm not going to go into it in detail. What I will say though is that there's much debate and much controversy around this, all right? The Autism Science Foundation says that vaccines don't cause autism, and they cite many articles and studies to support this. But there are many people, many parents and other professionals who saw the change after the MMR vaccine and other vaccines. And there are various reasons. They think it could be to do with mixing a vaccine, so it's not just for measles, it's for measles, mumps, and rubella. They talk about the metals in them as well. So there are various factors that people believe have an impact there. But what I can just say is that you need to do your own research, consult professionals, and just make the right decision for you and your family. Prevalence. Okay, the stats are always changing, but the latest ones are 1 in 88 children. Okay? And that's high. That's high. And no one is immune to autism. It affects every race, ethnicity, socioeconomic group. No one's immune to it. There's been a profound trajectory that has just gone sky high since 2000. And also when it comes to twins, identical twins, there's an 80% chance that if one of your twins is autistic, the other will be. And then with fraternal, it's 38%. Okay, now why the increase? All right. So from 2000 to 2008, it's gone up by 78%. And there are various factors that people are looking into. Is it because people are reporting it more? Now we know what we're looking for. All right. The definitions are getting broader. Also, people are putting off having kids for later on in life. Is that having an effect? Are we better able to diagnose now? And what impact is technology having on us? So there's no clear-cut answer. Once again, like I said, lots we don't know, but we do know that the trajectory is just going up. Okay. I think my child has ASD, so what now? If you're a parent or know kids that you think there might be a concern, what do we do? Okay, you need to see your pediatrician immediately. If you leave here with one thing today, it's don't wait. Okay? Straight away. You need to find out what's going on. Don't wait and see, like, I'm sure this will get better. Don't. The earlier you intervene, the better the prognosis. And we'll hear that more from Louise. Let's just look at some myths surrounding autism. So the first one, I want to stress it again. It's better to wait and see. Complete myth. You need to start as soon as possible to get that diagnosis, find out what's going on, and then start your intervention. Okay, all children with autism are mentally challenged. That's not the case. People often think there's mental retardation because they don't have the language and the speech. All right, but you need to intervene as early as possible to teach them. We set targets and goals, and with therapy, kids can reach certain targets depending on the severity of their ASD. But also, like I said, it might not just be autism at play. There might be a lot more going on in that pie chart. Right, all children with autism are savants. People always say, oh, but aren't they really bright? They're amazing at maths, or they're so creative. And that's actually about 5% of the autistic population, that they're incredibly superior in one area. It's not the norm. Okay, children who are mildly autistic don't need early intervention. It doesn't matter about the severity. You need to intervene as soon as possible to help the kids learn skills to cope in the world that we live in. Okay, people with autism are violent or dangerous. Okay, sometimes you're going to see behavior that might be violent, but if you look at where it's coming from, it's 99% of the time going to be out of frustration. Imagine you're in pain, or you're sick, or you want something, and you cannot tell anyone. All right? So it's very unlikely that it's going to be out of malice. It's normally frustration. Okay, all children with autism do not want to be touched or hugged. All right, a lot of them are sensory defensive, like I spoke about. They're sensitive to touch. So if it's unplanned or unexpected, you might get a negative reaction. But there are children who do want love and affection in that way, but they don't know how to ask for it. It's similar with attention. People think, oh, just leave them alone. They don't want attention. They do. They just don't know how to ask for it. Okay, appropriately. Okay. People with ASD can't live successful lives as contributing members of society. Of course, this depends on the severity, but many people do live meaningful lives. But again, intervening as soon as possible, that will increase the likelihood of this happening. And everyone with autism presents the same way? Absolutely not. Each person's case is completely unique, and it needs to be treated as such. I'm talking about treatment. Is there treatment? If you get a diagnosis, you always want to know, what can we do? With anything. And yes, there is treatment, but no, there isn't a cure. There's no regimen of go on this and everything will be fine. It's not that simple. There are a variety of therapies that have been proven to be helpful. And what's really important is you work holistically. So you're not just coming in from a medical side, or you're not just coming in from a social side, or just a diet side, but that you work with a multidisciplinary group of professionals, so you can hit this from every angle in a way to help the child get the best results. And there are many places that are specialists in autism. Like I said, Reach Autism South Africa, the Centre for Play and Learning, SNAP, Autism Western Cape. These people are the experts, they know what they're doing, and to consult them is really important. Okay, then, sorry. Go back. Applied behavioral analysis. I'm just finishing up with treatment and then I'm going to pass on to Louise. Applied behavioral analysis is the most profoundly researched area of treatment in autism. Okay, it's called ABA for short. And the rationale for ABA is that any learned behavior followed by a reinforcer will increase the likelihood of that behavior happening again. Alright? So I ask a child to do something. Can you tell me, do you want a banana or an apple? You get no response. But if they give some type of response and you reward it with their favorite toy or with anything that they like, alright, that it's going to increase the likelihood of that happening again. They're going to make a choice next time because they got rewarded for it. Initially, you're giving tangible rewards, but you're going to fade that because initially going, well done, means nothing. But eventually, once they're learning and they're growing, that is going to be, that's thumbs up, because initially thumbs up is just your thumbs in the sky. But eventually they're going to understand that they're proud of me and they're going to be motivated like that. So it's very intensive. It's 20 to 40 hours of therapy a week. So it's huge. It's a huge commitment on this part of the family and the therapist and the child. These are individualized programs that are constantly updated all the time. And these activities are used to teach skills, like something moved there, teach to use skills such as choosing, decision making, counting, making comparisons, understanding instructions, understanding expressions. So you in a playful way, using toys, using what's around the child, you're teaching them these skills. Okay, ABA is huge. I'm giving you one slide on it, but just so you know, if you hear people speaking about ABA, that's what it is. And then lastly, what I'm going to look at is diet. So research shows a link between gastrointestinal issues and autism. And there's a lot of research into dietary interventions, and that was one of Louise and them saving graces, and she'll touch on that. And there are two very widely used diets at the moment. The first one is SCD, the specific carbohydrate diet, and that says that the gut can't digest complex carbohydrates. So you're taking them out of the diet, and you're going to remove starch and sugars, and then you're going to pair proteins and carbs, and also supplement the gut to allow the gut to heal. And often parents will see a regression first before things get better, and also at certain periods there are regressions, but a lot of parents report improvement. And then GFCF is gluten-free, casein-free diet. Gluten is the protein in wheat, and casein is the protein in milk and dairy. The rationale is that some people's guts can't digest proteins. And the gut is not an unhealthy gut where there's leaky gut syndrome. The intestines are not a perfectly closed tube. So things are escaping and getting out. So when these unprocessed proteins are getting out of the gut into the bloodstream, they go to the brain and you get a neuro effect. Alright, so I think we forget that what's going on up here can really be affected by other parts of our bodies. So you get an opiate effect there, so the kids are zoned out. And so when you take that out of their system, I often see a really good improvement in their behavior. Alright, and lastly, I just want to leave you with this before I hand over to Louise. Autism, where the little things are never little, where the smallest milestones are celebrated, and we are just so thankful for progress and not perfection. So if you've got any questions, I'll be around afterwards, and I've got business cards here as well. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Well, I wasn't really expecting such a huge audience. But I am going to begin with a little clip that they're going to play for you to see. This clip, I was going to cut it short just for the purposes of the talk today, because 20 minutes is just way too short to actually explain our whole story. But as my husband and I looked at it over the last couple of days, I just decided to leave it exactly like it is, because Kim and Sam asked me for my personal experience, and you won't get more personal than this video was for us. It was made about 2 years ago, a little less. I actually want to just clarify that. My daughter was diagnosed at 19 months, not 2 years, so she was even younger than that. And she lost her diagnosis today, exactly, 2 years and a month ago. So she wasn't, it's not recent that she lost her diagnosis, it was, over 2 years ago already. But anyway, this video was made once she had lost her diagnosis, and we had a celebration with friends and family just to really acknowledge what had happened in her life and acknowledge the support that they had given her. So it's her story from beginning to end, it's our story from beginning to end. Fortunately, we haven't ended it. And so here it goes, you can watch it, and then I'm just going to expand on that a bit.
I'm bringing home a baby bumblebee. Want my mommy, please don't help me. I'm bringing home a baby bumblebee. Ow! You stung me! You stung me! I'm bringing home a baby bumblebee. Want my mommy, please don't help me. I'm pushing up the baby bumblebee. It's yucky! No! I'm riding up the baby bumblebee.
This is just shortly before she lost her diagnosis. She's not looking autistic here, but you'll see the progression later.
When the opportunity arose for us to move back to London, I was just super excited, and more so because we had this incredible house in Kingston, right by Richmond Park, and I was really looking forward to Skylar just having the opportunity to play in the park.
Skylar was quite a challenging baby right from birth, and we had loads of problems, and eventually at 4.5 months discovered that she had silent reflux, and we started medicating her from then, and she really seemed to improve dramatically. So by the time she was 9 months old and we moved to London, she was, as far as we were concerned, quite a cheerful, interactive little girl. And she was particularly great with us, but not really interacting with others. So at this stage, we just considered her to be a really sensitive baby, and we're not overly concerned about anything.
Even though she was a sensitive child, we still managed to take her out for a hike in the Lake District, and even tried mountain biking with her, which we did with mixed success.
We started seeing repetitive behavior in Skylar when she was about 1 year old. In this picture, it was dubbed her Stone Song by her nana, and in retrospect, it was probably her first dim, but she was too little for us to really realize or see it for what it was at that stage.
When we returned to London, we went to Venice for Lou's birthday, and Skylar was actually amazing. She rode on my back all the way through Venice.
Our first signs of a real problem with Skylar came at about 15 to 17 months when my mom came to visit us in London. And Skylar had started toe walking, and my mom remarked on how cute it was, but she was a little ballerina. And I remember being really concerned about it and just really knew that it wasn't right and wasn't cute at all.
It was a couple of months later that my mom actually said to me, if you look at the photos of Skylar in Bruges, you can just see that there was something not there, that she just wasn't connecting with anyone really. This was the thing that worried me the most, that she just wasn't connecting with me anymore.
Our most concerning time with Skylar Skylar was when she was 19 months old, and we'd come home to Cape Town to get a visa for her, and we went away for a weekend to Shelley Point with our family, and she was just completely stressed out. She was anxious all the time, really antisocial, didn't want to be anywhere near her cousins or anyone else, and we really struggled with her that weekend. And that was what pushed us to take her to see the psychologist, because we just knew there was a very big problem then. I was shocked by a diagnosis of autism because I knew that she had sensory processing problems, but I never really thought we were dealing with a full-blown autistic spectrum disorder.
On diagnosis day, I remember just sitting in the car and crying because I thought my girl would never ever have a conversation with me.
After Skylar's diagnosis, we went back to London and we started therapeutic listening with her and the diet, because that was all that we could do in that 4 months that we were back there. And at the same time, it was just an incredibly emotional time for me. I've never cried so much in my whole life. Just spent every waking moment of every day for 4 months, bawling my eyes out, just completely wrecked for my girl.
Lou was a basket case in London. I mean, she was crying all the nights, or in the evening, 3 or 4 hours a night. And it's during this time that God gave her that picture of a pearl, and it was an amazing picture in which God was showing out of something difficult, He was going to make something beautiful, and that was kind of the word that came back over and over again. And on the last day we were in London, we took a pearl from a bracelet that Skylar and I had given Lou. We wrote her notes. We went to our favourite spot in the park and actually buried them under a tree for one day when Skylar was healed, but she could go and dig it up.
When we came back from London, we got Skylar into therapy immediately because we knew that time was our enemy with her. And as much as we hated putting such a tiny little girl into therapy and putting so much pressure on her at such a young age, we knew that we had to do it in order to get the outcome that we now have. And so in the beginning, she started with 3 hours of one-on-one therapy a day, which we later increased to 5 hours. And then she had 2 speech therapists and an occupational therapist, and at the same time we kept her consistently on the GFCF diet.
After diagnosis day, I kind of had this faith that I didn't really understand, that was not really able to stand up to scrutiny, but it almost a stubborn faith that Skylar would be healed. And there were very few times where I felt that faith rock, but there was just one time where Lou had been really down and I just felt terrible, and I went into the garden and sat down on the steps, and what used to be a kind of wasteland at the back of our house, God had turned into something beautiful. And He just said to me, I'm going to do that for your girl. After that, I didn't doubt that God was going to heal Skylar.
Our first glimpse of the possibility of recovery with Skylar came when we went away to Shelley Point again for a weekend with our family. And it was the first time that we really saw her show any kind of social motivation, and she just probably for the first time was really playing with her cousins and really having fun, and it was just such a happy, blissful weekend for us, which was very uncommon, a very, very rare thing for us.
The biggest change that I saw was this amazing interaction where she just wanted to be so social and so in touch with us.
We had Skylar on the gluten and calcium-free diet for 1.5 years, but we were just not winning. She still had severe gut problems despite our diligence with the diet and despite tons and tons of biomedical intervention. And we were really just praying for a key for her. And God definitely provided that key in the form of the specific carbohydrate diet, which we started with her in October of 2010. And in our opinion, this diet has really saved her life. We really started to see huge improvements in Skylar after we started the specific carbohydrate diet. And within a week she was toilet trained. We gradually saw an improvement in her social motivation, her speech improved, her gross motor ability improved, where she started riding a scooter for the first time and a motorbike that she'd never been interested in before. Her pretend playing improved, her sensory issues reduced, her gut problems improved, her anxiety levels went down. So this was really the right in the beginning when Skylar was diagnosed, God gave me so many promises and pictures and visions and, so many things that He said over her life. And although I had so much doubt along the way, it's just so awesome that we've got to a point today where I can say that every single one of those promises has come true and every single one of those visions have come to fruition. And our God is just so mind-blowingly, magnificently faithful and powerful and just and loving and kind and caring and it's just he's blown my mind, and we need to shout His fame for what He's done for Skylar. My girl is the most precious, most amazing little person I've ever known. She just, every day she blows my mind with the thoughts she has, the things she says, the things she does. She's exciting, she's interesting, she's fun, she's enthusiastic, she's full on, she takes life, with open arms, and she gives so much back, and she's just the best, most precious little thing that I could ever wanted or hope for in a child.
My only regret about this video is that it was obviously made for the purpose of celebration of her life. So there's very little of the actual autistic behavior that she used to display in this video. And that really, I think, speaks to a lot of what we were going through at the time, because no one wants to see your child like that. You don't ever want to record the difficulty, the tantrums, the meltdowns, the difficult times, the excessive anxious state that she was always in. And I think life was just so stressful for us as well. We just never got around to videoing or photographing her as well. So unfortunately you can't see the stark contrast between how she was and how she is now in this video. But to give you some kind of an idea, when she was first diagnosed and a couple, after we came back from London and got her into therapy, we did a social therapy assessment on her, and in that assessment, they couldn't even consistently get the first two functions of that particular therapy, the social functions, out of her consistently. And those ones are only for eye contact and showing shared enjoyment in any kind of a very basic, playful scenario. So, she was checked out completely. We couldn't access her much in that way at all. And even I realize that even more so in retrospect now than I was willing to admit at the time. But Kim and Sam have asked me to really just explain from a parent's point of view what you go through having a child with autism. So I've kind of divided in my own mind her story and the progression of her story into 4 different phases. And I'm just going to really briefly touch on what we really went through, or specifically for me, what I really went through as a parent. And I think it just begins with really the excessive pain that I felt when she was diagnosed. And I had a history of working with children on the spectrum, and specifically autistic children, and I see a very special mom here today, and another teacher that I actually used to facilitate her son with at school, and so I might look familiar to you too. So when she was diagnosed, I knew exactly what we were dealing with. It wasn't pain or difficulty around what to do, what do you do now. It was more, I knew exactly what we had to do. But my pain and my anxiety was around, would she respond? Because I think for parents, that's one of the hardest things, is you just, you can give them therapy till you're blue in the face, you can try every possible approach, and you just never know. You can never predict the prognosis of a child when they're given a diagnosis. And for me, that was the scariest thing, was that I knew exactly what we needed to do, but I never knew whether she would respond at all and how well she would respond. And it created such an immense amount of anxiety for me. And then the other overwhelming emotion that I had was pain. And I have never felt pain like that in my entire life. It was a really physical manifestation of pain that I felt. And I remember saying to someone once, it was like someone had ripped my heart out, thrown it on the ground, and smashed it to smithereens with a 10-pound hammer. And that's really graphic, but that's the only way I can describe what I was going through and what I really felt. And this video doesn't say it, but I was pregnant at the time of her diagnosis, and that same week I lost the baby. And I don't for a second doubt that it was due to the pain and the stress that I was feeling at the time. So for parents, if you're someone who doesn't, you're not in this world of autism and you know someone, that's the kind of intense pain that you feel over being told that your child might never speak to you, like my husband says in this video. Now she speaks too much, but so those were my overwhelming emotions in the first stage. And then we obviously got the action plan in place, and we got her into therapy and started doing whatever we could. And initially the biggest issue for me there was that she wasn't even 2 yet when we started. And I'm a play therapist myself and have a background in child psychology and development, and it just went against every fiber in my being to put that kind of pressure on such a tiny little thing. And I know that there are tons of other parents who feel that kind of guilt over what you are subjecting your child to, and they just don't get a normal life ever, because you constantly have to be teaching and using every opportunity to squeeze as much as you can out just to give them some kind of chance at life. And that was really, really hard for me. And having been a tutor, it was also extremely difficult for me to separate my tutor mind from my mommy mind and just be a mother and use every opportunity I could. It was so extremely difficult to find a balance between the two. Fortunately, somehow we did, and it's been a wonderful journey really, but it was very, very difficult in the beginning. Then added to that, we had, like you heard, she was in tons of different therapies, and I think at the height of it all, we were spending about 20,000 Rand a month on her, and I wasn't working at that stage because I'm a bit of a control freak and wanted to really have my finger on the pulse of what was going on at home, and I wanted to be available to her at any time that she needed me. So the stress on my husband was massive, really huge, to have to sustain that kind of financial output. And fortunately for us, it was a 2.5-year journey, and we've been able, she's still in a little bit of therapy, but it's kind of just maintenance, and I think it's more for my anxiety than anything of her need. But you can't sustain that kind of thing, and I know that for many, many parents, they don't have access to that kind of care for their kids, and they certainly don't have the financial resources, and that is still something that eats me up every day, that we were able to do that, and there's so many people who can't do that for their kids. So that was also really tricky. And then also I could talk about this for ages as well, but the social isolation that we felt. We came back from London, and part of it was because we needed support structures around us, and we really needed people to back us up and just give us that kind of support that we needed. And the irony of it all was that at the time that we needed them most, people didn't know how to respond to us. They didn't know what to do with our daughter. They just didn't know how to be around her. And we needed them, but we were in such a broken state that we didn't know how to receive whatever morsels people were just trying to give us. And it caused such immense pain with friends and family. It was just really isolating. And then added to that, you just get so much judgment from other people who don't understand the disorder. They don't understand your children. And I remember going to a workshop that was held once, and Skylar's teachers, and she was amazing. She was really an incredible teacher. But she stood up in the workshop, and it was even amazing that she was there, but she stood up in the workshop, and we were talking about behavior and how to manage behavior and that kind of thing. And she said something or other about behavior, and then she said, and Skylar obviously gets away with murder at home. And I just remember, I just actually wanted to pack up my bag and walk out because she so didn't get it. And that kind of social isolation that you get when people just don't really fully understand what autism is all about. So in that phase, those were the hardest things I dealt with. And then obviously, she started making progress. And I think, if you're going to find any, which I know for any parents in this room is so hard, because we just hate the A word. But if you're going to find something great in autism, it's that the lows are so extremely, disgustingly low, but the highs are just incredibly euphorically high. And when she started making progress, and these pictures of her on the scooter, that was taken shortly after she started riding a scooter. And we bought that scooter for her in London, and she was never even interested in it. And if I'd ever tried to get her on it, she just had no clue what to do with it. Her gross motor development was so far behind, and her motivation was just non-existent. And she got onto that scooter, and she started doing that. Now you can imagine how we felt seeing her just suddenly be able to use the scooter with complete ease and proficiency. So the lows are low, but the highs are so extremely high. I think almost because your expectations are lower, which is terrible, but you become in that state of not expecting much from your child. And when they deliver, it's just this incredible, amazing feeling of pride and, relief and just elation at the success that they're showing, or the accomplishments that they achieve. And then the nice thing about the progress for us was we really struggled with the idea of having another child, and obviously after the miscarriage, when she was diagnosed, we really felt that we wanted another child, but then you just go through this whole minefield of, is it selfish, and are you taking from the child that you already need to be giving so much more to? So it was really a really long struggle for us, and so many people just have babies, or they don't have to plan like we had to plan, and I went through a rigorous process of doing biomedical intervention for myself, and I was on a diet while I was pregnant with him, and a diet until I stopped breastfeeding him, and it was really hard, really, really hard. But we made that choice in the end, and thank heavens it's been the most amazing journey. He's 22 months old now, and he's divine, and his development is all fine, and it's really been a massive, massive blessing to have him. But it was not an easy decision. It's one that we agonized over for ages. But the progress that she made enabled us to make that decision for our family. So that, in that phase, was one of the great things. And then obviously, we got recovery in the end. And the difficult thing about it was that we were chasing it constantly. We were fighting so hard in every way we possibly could to get this diagnosis lifted. And then we went and had her assessed, and the diagnosis was lifted, and we were like, really? Did she really say what we think she said? And even to the point where I phoned the psychologist afterwards, and I said to her, Carrie, really, you have to just confirm this for me. Did you just say what I think you said? And obviously she didn't have the results from the assessment back yet, but she said, yes, yeah, you can assume she doesn't fit the criteria anymore. And we didn't know what to do with it, because we hadn't realized how we had developed this whole way of being with our child and being in the world of autism, and it's a whole process of learning that we had to unlearn. And like I said, today on this date, it's 2 years and a month since she lost that diagnosis officially, and I can only now say that we're starting to let go and trust her in social environments, to go away with friends and know that she must come back to us. Simple things like that, and just to let go and allow her to be neurotypical, to allow her to be normal. And that's almost been harder for us than it was to deal with the autism, because there we had a game plan. I knew what the strategy was, and we got to the end of this, and we haven't really known what to do with it, and it's been really difficult, but we'll take it. Every parent in this room that has a child on the spectrum, you'll take it. It's hard when you get there, but it's the most amazing, difficult situation to have. So we're really, really in an incredibly privileged position now. And I just want to end with that too, is that's what recovery has given us, is that the small blessing in disguise that autism has given us, but we never take anything for granted. Every single word that comes out of my son's mouth, I realize we didn't have it with her at that stage. And everything she does now, this morning she got an award in her assembly for enthusiasm in all her tasks. So she was the star of the class this week. And she went up on stage to get an award this morning, and I mean, she's done it a few times now since the diagnosis was lifted. But she would never, ever have been able to do that. That kind of social situation was just way too overwhelming for her. So this morning, watching her go up on stage wasn't just like, I know, but I experience it differently to what other mothers do who haven't been through this journey. And it's just, every tiny little thing is never taken for granted. We appreciate our kids and their development and what they give back to our family more than I ever would have before. So it's an amazing, amazing journey. And I just want to end off by saying that I know our story is rare and you don't see recovery that often. But I do want to say that with increased awareness, which is so awesome that they're doing these talks, and I almost hope that there's some people who've learned something about autism here, because the more awareness there is, obviously then their needs can be met sooner. And like with Skylar, fortunately I had the background that I did, and early intervention made such a massive difference for her. But the earlier you get in there and the more awareness it's created, makes our story possible for families. It really does. And for those who've got older children, there might be some of you here as well, and I know that's heartbreaking to me as well. The research that's come through in the last 10 years has benefited my daughter, and unfortunately the older kids, their parents didn't have the benefit of a lot of the research that was done in the last 10 years. And that is still heartbreaking for me, and for some kids, I know a lot of parents who've kind of lost the hope of recovery, but still, research is out there, they're still doing research, and I think as the stats go up like this, there's more of a responsibility to do more research. And while there's more information, there's always something you can do, and when there's something that you can do, there's always hope. So I just want to end on that message, that there is always hope. Even if you've been fighting for 10 years, there still is hope.
Run out of time. You can just bear with me for a few minutes. Louise, on behalf of SACAP, and I think everybody here, we just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being so brave and your willingness to come and share your story and Skylar's story as well. And your story is definitely a story of hope and has definitely inspired all of us. So thank you so much. And Kim Katz just wants to give you a small token of our appreciation. Thank you so much. Samantha, I know you're part of the furniture. I know why we appointed you as one of our educators, but I think only today, experiencing your talk, do I know why our SACAP students call you a gem of an educator. So thank you for an informative and inspiring talk. And to all of you, thank you once again for joining our learning community, and I hope to see you back next month. We have another talk planned. Some of you will have leaflets on your chairs. It's next month, the 2nd of May. So brace yourself, and Kim Katz, our events coordinator, will be emailing all of you regarding the event. That's the one thing. The second thing is, anybody interested in knowing more about SACAP, please come and talk to me, and I'll put you in touch with one of our advisors. And thirdly, if you're not in a rush, please join us for tea and coffee and some lovely SACAP biscuits. Until next time, drive safely, and thank you.
Thank you.